Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring the world of rhetoric
Oh, very cool.
and, especially how it has the potential to totally change education,
Yeah,
especially for young minds. It's a fascinating area.
it is. It's amazing how something so old can still be so important
Why?
even today. And we're not just talking theory here. We've got some actual research on a program that's designed to teach rhetoric to kids.
Exactly. We are looking at a certificate of publication for a paper called Beyond Words,
Okay,
a rhetoric teaching program for effective communication.
I like it.
And it was published in the International Research Journal of Education and Technology.
Okay.
It's authored by Kallol Chakrabarti.
All right.
But we also have some excerpts from a podcast script about this program.
Oh.
So we kind of get a two-pronged look
Yeah.
into how it's being used.
I love it.
And get this,
Okay.
it combines, classic rhetorical techniques with teachings from the Bhagavad Gita.
Whoa, that's a combo I wouldn't have expected.
Now that's a combination.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, why is rhetoric such a big deal even in today's world?
Well, I think if you think about it, rhetoric is all about communication that, makes a difference, influences, persuades.
Yeah.
It's always been powerful throughout history. I mean,
Right.
go back to,
Yeah.
Aristotle's speeches in ancient Greece or the debates that
Right.
shaped the Roman Senate, right?
Yeah.
This has been going on for a long time.
So it's not just speaking eloquently, it's about actually crafting a message that resonates.
Yes, exactly. It's understanding your audience,
Yeah.
building a solid argument,
Right.
choosing the right words to get your point across.
Right.
And that's relevant
Yeah,
in so many areas of life.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, whether you're giving a presentation at work
Sure.
or trying to convince your friends
Yeah.
to try that new restaurant,
Exactly.
you're using those skills
All the time,
all the time.
And this program that we're looking at takes these timeless rhetorical principles and brings them into the classroom.
Right. So it's not just this abstract concept.
Yeah.
Students are actually learning how to use it.
We are. And the goal is to give educators the tools.
Okay.
They need to systematically teach rhetoric, not as a separate subject,
Right.
but woven into different areas of learning.
Okay. Got it.
Make it much more engaging,
Right.
applicable for students.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The program blends classical rhetoric
Mm.
with teachings from the Bhagavad Gita.
Right.
So it's not just about teaching kids to be persuasive,
Yeah.
but it's doing so
Yeah.
with a strong moral compass.
I love that. It was really interesting to read that they draw a parallel between Aristotle's concept of ethos,
Great.
which is basically, the credibility of the speaker,
Mm-hmm.
and the concept of dharma in the Bhagavad Gita.
Right.
It's not just about being convincing. It's about
Yeah.
the moral foundation behind what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. So it's adding that ethical dimension to rhetoric,
Exactly.
encouraging students to consider the values and principles behind their words.
Yes. The program really emphasizes this ethical communication piece, encouraging students to think critically about, the impact of what they say and to be mindful of their audience, which are crucial skills for today's world, right?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I am hooked. So let's break down this program. What have you learned about its core parts?
Well, one thing that stood out to me is they're targeting students in grades 5 through 8.
Okay, so middle school, basically.
Yeah. Why that age group, you ask?
I mean, yeah. Why that age group?
Well, kids in those grades, they're forming their opinions. They're becoming more aware of the world, starting to develop, their own sense of self. So it's a really important time for shaping how they're going to communicate and engage with others.
It's setting the foundation
It is.
for how they'll be adults in the world.
Exactly. So by introducing these concepts early on,
Yeah.
the program aims to equip them with the skills to communicate effectively, to think critically, and to make, ethical decisions.
Got it. And how does the program address those real world issues that kids are grappling with today?
Well, they specifically mentioned issues like radicalism,
Oh, wow.
use of derogatory language, and, navigating ethical dilemmas they don't shy away from, difficult topics,
Right.
For example, the research paper talks about using a case study approach,
Right.
drawing examples from the Bhagavad Gita
Right.
to help students apply those rhetorical principles
Right.
to real-world ethical dilemmas.
So it's not just like theoretical.
No.
They're actually getting like practical tools.
Yes, to
Like
analyze.
you can analyze complex situations.
Exactly. And they're encouraged to look for those nuanced approaches
Okay.
to problem solving.
Got it. It sounds like this program is not just about teaching rhetoric,
Right.
but it's like actually about empowering these students
Yes.
to be more thoughtful and engaged
Yes.
and ethical
That's true.
communicators.
Yeah.
So how is this actually implemented in classrooms?
Well, it seems like it's designed as a professional development program for teachers.
Got it.
So instead of being a separate curriculum, it focuses on giving teachers the resources and the training
Okay.
to incorporate it into their existing methods.
So they're kind of taking the lead and then passing it on.
Exactly. It's like
Well, I shouldn't.
equipping them with the tools and knowledge to then pass it on
Right.
in a way that fits, their style and
Yeah.
their subject matter.
Right. And that adaptability is so important because it allows the program to work in such diverse settings.
Yeah.
Right? It could be a school in rural India, a school in a big city, a classroom in another country.
Exactly.
I mean, the possibilities really endless.
The creators really seem to get that. One size doesn't fit all.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh.
I am curious about the technology piece.
Yeah.
How does the program integrate digital tools?
Yeah.
Because they're so important
They're huge.
in communication today.
They are.
So I don't know. What have you found about that?
Well, from what I've gathered, the program seems to really embrace technology.
Okay.
The podcast script even mentioned incorporating things like multimedia presentations, podcasts, and even social media.
So it's not just analyzing speeches
No.
from like way back when.
Right.
It's understanding how rhetoric functions today.
Yeah.
Like on social media, in these online debates.
Exactly. And all of that
Yeah.
helps students really understand
Yeah.
that rhetorical principles are at work in all forms of communication.
Right. Even especially in this digital world,
Absolutely.
this program really seems to cover it all.
It does.
So what kind of impact is it having in actual classrooms? Like, could you paint us a picture of what this looks like?
Well, imagine a classroom where students are not just writing essays, but they're crafting arguments that actually matter to them.
Yeah.
Right? Where presentations aren't just about delivering information,
Right.
but they're actually about sparking conversations.
That's so different
It is.
from like the traditional image of like that quiet classroom.
Yeah, with everybody just sitting there listening to a lecture, right?
Yeah,
It's much more dynamic.
Right.
And imagine them diving into debates, not just to win, but to actually understand different perspectives.
Yeah.
And refine their own argument.
Right.
Think about them like analyzing speeches
Yeah.
or even ad campaigns.
Oh, wow.
Becoming more aware of how language is used.
To
Yeah.
shape, how they think.
Right. It's like they're getting this superpower to see through all the noise and understand what's really being said.
And not just understand, participate.
Right.
Craft their own arguments.
Yeah.
And use their voices, effectively.
It's about empowering them to be like active, engaged citizens.
Yes.
Rather than just passive
Absolutely.
consumers of information.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's one of the goals of the program, right?
It is.
It's fostering this global competence among students.
Yeah. And I think that's important.
I'm curious about that. What does global competence mean in this context?
Well, we live in such an interconnected world, right?
We do.
And so understanding different cultures, perspectives, ways of communicating is more important than ever.
So it's not just about being persuasive. It's also about being able to connect with people who are different from you.
And engage in dialogue.
Even when you disagree.
Exactly.
Right. And that's exactly what this program is trying to do.
To teach
them for.
And I love that, they emphasize that this program is so adaptable.
Yeah.
It can work in all these different places.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It is. That adaptability is like one of its biggest strengths, I think.
Now I'm curious to see how it's being received and like what results it's actually generating.
Me too.
Have you come across any information about that?
I have. There's some promising data emerging.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Like what kind of results are we seeing?
Well, for example, they've seen a decrease in like the use of derogatory language
Okay.
among students,
That's great.
and even a reduction in like violent incidents.
Wow, so it's actually contributing to
Yeah,
a better school environment.
it seems like it.
I mean, that's very encouraging to hear.
Yeah, it is.
And the data also shows an improvement
Yes,
in those ethical reasoning skills.
it does.
Which makes sense.
Right.
With that moral development focus.
Exactly.
So it's not just about persuasion, it's about
Yeah.
being responsible with your words.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this data shows that it's actually working,
It's very promising.
which is so great.
It is.
And, we talked about how the program is adaptable.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's some exciting news,
Okay.
especially for our listeners.
Yeah.
In India,
Yeah. Tell me.
according to that podcast script, the program is in the process of being copyrighted
Wow.
with the Indian government.
That's huge.
So, I mean, what does that mean?
Well, if it goes through, it could mean
Yeah.
that this program could be integrated into education policies
Yeah.
and practices like on a national level.
That is a big deal.
It is.
Imagine the impact of that.
Yeah. It's really exciting to think about.
One of the things that I find really interesting about this program
Yeah.
is how it challenges
Yeah.
those traditional notions of education.
I agree.
It's not just about memorizing facts and figures.
Yeah.
It's about, like, giving students the tools to think for themselves,
Yes. I love.
analyze information,
Yes.
really articulate their perspectives.
Absolutely. It's like giving them the ability to navigate the world with confidence.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it really aligns with, like,
Yeah.
what we know about how people actually learn, right?
It does.
Like, when students are engaged,
Yeah.
when they're challenged
Yeah.
to think critically,
Yeah.
apply that knowledge to the real world, that's when the real learning
Yeah.
happens.
I agree. And remember, this program,
Yeah.
it's not just about like lectures and textbooks.
Right.
They talk about things like
Yeah.
debates, speech writing,
Yeah.
storytelling, even like analyzing political campaigns.
I love that. Yeah.
It's about, taking those ancient principles
Yeah.
and applying them to modern things.
Yes,
Yes.
the kids are actually interested in.
Things that are relevant to
Yeah,
kids.
exactly.
I can just like imagine the energy
I know.
in these classrooms, like with the debates and analyzing,
Oh.
like even like a popular song.
Totally. And think about all the skills they're developing
Ah,
along the way, right?
absolutely.
Critical thinking,
Yeah.
argumentation, research,
Yeah.
speaking, listening.
Yeah.
These are all essential,
Yeah.
not just for academics,
Yeah.
but for life in general.
Exactly. It's giving them those tools
It is.
to navigate like
Yeah.
a world that's increasingly complex.
Yes.
And where communication
Yes.
is key.
It's everything.
And it's not limited
Yeah.
to just like one place,
No.
one culture, or anything.
We've talked about how adaptable it is.
Yes, but what makes it so
Yeah.
flexible?
Well, I think the key is that it's structured as like a framework.
Rather than a strict curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So teachers get the resources, the tools, but they have the freedom to adapt them
Right.
to their classrooms, their students, and their cultures.
So, like, a teacher in a village in India
Yeah,
could use these same principles
totally.
to teach a lesson on traditional storytelling, whereas, like, a teacher in a modern urban school in Europe
Yeah.
could use the same principles
Yeah.
to analyze, like, a current political debate.
Exactly.
That makes it so brilliant.
It does. It takes those timeless principles, but
Yeah.
it's flexible enough to apply in all these different ways,
Right.
and that makes it accessible to like a truly global audience.
That makes so much sense. And it allows, for those cultural nuances
Yes.
and different learning styles.
Absolutely.
And, I think it's important to emphasize that rhetoric isn't just about, like, winning an argument
No, it's much more than that.
or manipulating people.
Yeah.
It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's really about understanding how powerful language is.
Yeah.
Like those nuances
Yeah.
of persuasion
Yeah.
and the importance of ethical communication.
Exactly.
It's about using your voice
Yes.
to have a positive impact.
Yeah.
Building those bridges,
Yeah.
fostering understanding,
Yeah. Even when
you disagree.
exactly.
And by giving a new generation
Yeah.
these skills,
Yeah.
this program has the potential to really, like, change not just classrooms, but society as a whole.
The ripple effect.
Right, yeah. So for those listeners who are, like, totally fascinated by this and want to, like, learn more or even get involved,
Right.
what are some ways they can do that?
Well, like we mentioned earlier, you can start by checking out the published materials,
Right.
the certificate of publication.
Yeah.
We have points to the International Research Journal of Education and Technology. You can probably find the full paper online.
Awesome. And what if somebody wants to
Yeah.
dive in
Yeah.
and apply these concepts to their own work or bring the program
Yeah.
to their school
Yeah.
or community?
Well, the podcast script mentioned that there are workshops and training modules available.
Oh, cool.
So
there are ways
for educators who want to dive in,
get hands-on.
to bring it to their own classrooms.
Perfect. And actually, speaking of getting hands-on, I think we have some time to maybe answer some questions from our listeners.
Great.
They've been sending in some really thoughtful ones.
I bet.
So
Let's see what they have to say.
let's dive into those.
Oh.
One listener asks,
Okay.
what happens after the program ends? Do students retain these skills or do they kind of go back to their old ways?
That's a really good question. I mean, it gets at the heart of whether this creates real lasting change, And while we need more long-term studies.
The early research seems to show that it does have a lasting impact.
Okay.
And I think one of the key reasons for that is because it's integrated into so many different parts of school.
Yeah, so it's not just a one-time thing. It's woven
Part of the fabric.
into the way they learn.
Yeah.
So they're constantly using these skills.
And that makes a big difference.
It becomes second nature.
It does.
Almost.
And when teachers are empowered to incorporate it into what they're already doing.
Right.
That creates a ripple effect,
Totally.
The whole school culture starts to change.
It becomes the norm.
Yeah.
Another listener asks, is this program only for students who are already good at speaking and debating, or can it also help those shy or introverted students?
That's a really common misconception about rhetoric. Yeah.
It's not just about being the loudest or the most outgoing. It's about understanding the principles of effective communication.
Regardless of your personality.
No matter who you are.
Yeah. So even a shy student might not become the star debater.
Right. But they can still learn how to construct persuasive arguments, structure their thoughts, express themselves with confidence, whether it's in writing or in a smaller group.
And rhetoric is more than just speaking, too, right?
It's about writing, visual communication, understanding how messages work across all these different mediums.
So even students who, don't like speaking in public can still get a lot out of it.
They can. They can learn how to, write an essay, a presentation, analyze a film.
Yeah.
It gives them tools.
It's a versatile skill set.
It is.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Okay.
A listener asks, this program sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But is it realistic to expect all teachers to be able to teach this effectively?
Yeah.
I mean, don't they already have so much
That's a valid concern.
on their plates?
It is. And it highlights why the professional development piece is so important.
Yeah.
It's not about adding more to their workload. It's about giving them support.
The tools.
The resources, the training.
Right, to feel like they can do this.
Yeah. And the program is designed to be flexible, right?
That is.
So they can integrate it in ways that work for them.
In a way that makes sense for them.
Not a total.
Yeah, it's not about
overhaul.
Throwing everything out
and
starting over.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
This Rhetoric Teacher Program is such a great example.
I think so. Of how this, ancient art, can be so relevant and engaging.
Yeah, and impactful.
For students today.
For sure.
It really shows how education can be more than just memorizing things.
It can be. About giving them skills.
And those skills.
To the real world.
To think for themselves.
Yes.
Communicate.
Yes.
Navigate a complex world.
Absolutely.
And it all comes back to rhetoric, right?
It does.
Not just persuasion.
Yeah.
But understanding how we communicate.
Nuance.
Using it to build bridges.
Yeah.
Foster understanding.
Even when we disagree.
Even when we disagree.
Yeah, it's been great exploring this with you.
Likewise.
Yeah.
And for our listeners,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us
Yes.
on this deep dive into the Rhetoric Teacher Program.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it
Yes.
as insightful
We did.
as we did.
Yeah.
And we'd love to hear
We would.
your thoughts on the program.
Your perspective.
So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. The podcast script actually mentions that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there are workshops and training modules available
Okay, great.
for educators who, want to take it to that next level.
Awesome. So there are those more, like
Yeah.
concrete
Yeah.
ways to get involved
There are.
and bring it to their own classrooms.
Exactly.
And, speaking of getting involved,
Yeah.
I think we have time for a few listener questions.
Cool. I love this part.
They've been sending in some really good ones.
I bet.
So let's dive into those.
Let's do it.
One listener asks,
Okay.
what happens after the program ends? Do the students, retain these skills, or
Right.
do they just go back to how they were before?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it really gets at whether the program makes a real difference long term.
Right.
And while we need more research on that, the early results suggest that it does have a lasting impact.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason is because it's integrated into so many different areas.
Right. So it's not just like this one-off thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's part of how they learn.
It's part of,
It's woven into...
the fabric of their education.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're constantly using these skills.
They are, and that makes a big difference.
It's not something they have to, think about.
Right. It becomes more natural.
Yeah.
And when teachers are able to incorporate it, into what they're already doing,
Right.
that helps too, right? It changes the whole school culture.
Yeah. It's like it becomes the norm.
It does.
Another listener asks,
Okay.
is this program only for those students who are already, good at speaking and debating?
Right.
Or can it also help those who are, more shy or introverted?
That's such a good question, and it's a common misconception about rhetoric.
Right.
It's not about being the loudest voice in the room or the most outgoing person.
It's more about, the principles.
Yeah. It's about understanding how to communicate effectively,
Exactly.
no matter what your personality is,
So, a shy student might not become a, star debater,
Right.
but they can still learn.
They can still learn how to craft arguments.
Exactly.
To get their point across.
Actually, their thoughts.
Express themselves with confidence.
Yeah. Whether that's, in writing or in smaller groups.
Exactly. And remember,
Yeah.
rhetoric isn't just about speaking. It's about writing. It's about visual communication.
Yeah.
It's about understanding how all these different forms of communication work.
So a student who maybe, doesn't want to speak in public
Right.
can still get a lot out of learning how to.
They can. They can learn how to, write a really strong essay.
Right?
Design a presentation, analyze a film, gives them tools they can use in any situation.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Okay.
A listener asks,
Mm-hmm.
this program sounds great,
Yeah.
but is it realistic to think that all teachers
Yeah.
can really teach this well?
Right.
I mean, don't they already have so much to do?
Yeah. No, I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It's a lot to ask, and I think that's why the professional development is so important,
Right.
It's not about adding more to their plates.
Yeah.
It's about giving them the support they need,
Tools. Yeah.
the resources, the training to feel like they can do it.
Yeah, to feel confident.
Yeah.
And the program is designed to be flexible. So it's not like they have to completely.
Yeah, they don't have to throw everything out and start over.
Right.
They can incorporate it.
They can make it their own.
It's in a way that works for them.
This has been such an interesting
It has.
deep dive.
Yeah.
The Rhetoric Teacher Program is such a cool example
I think so.
of how something so old can be so relevant and engaging for students today.
Absolutely.
It really shows that education doesn't have to be just about rote memorization.
Yes, does it?
It's about giving them the skills
It is.
they need to really thrive
Yes.
in the world today.
Absolutely.
And it all goes back to rhetoric.
It does.
Not just as a tool for persuasion, but as a way to understand how we communicate,
the nuances.
building those bridges,
Yeah.
fostering understanding,
Yeah.
even when we disagree.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners, thank you so much
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
for joining us on this deep dive
Yes.
into the Rhetoric Teacher Program.
We appreciate you being here.
And We would love to hear your thoughts
Yes. Tell us what I think.
on this program, so
Absolutely.
feel free to reach out and
Yeah.
let us know what you think.
We'd love to hear from you.